when you're working on this site is that anything that you write in Markdown or in Liquid or using these includes, it all gets kind of converted over to be a plain HTML website in the end. So what you actually get, you can look at if you say view source code, you can look through and see how everything works. You can see that the menu actually is baked into the page, for example. It's always there on every page. And we don't have to copy and paste it because we have the power of Jekyll, which always kind of transcludes the same main menu onto every page, because if we were doing it manually, it would be terrible. So that's fundamentally how this works, and I just thought everyone should know that in case you didn't already understand that. You can use tools in your browser as well to help with problems. There's a really, really great tool that's called the inspect tool. I'm not going to dwell on it, but I just want to show you super fast that you can right-click and choose inspect. It works in Chrome, it works in Firefox, and you can click through and you can look at everything and you can see how big things are. This is very helpful for diagnosing problems if you start getting a little bit more technical. So, or if you want to just help a developer understand what's going on, you can even try and do this. And there's plenty of guides out there, so I won't, this isn't going to be a tech demo on how to do that, but I want you to understand that that is a great, powerful tool. Inspect, it's amazing. There's all kinds of good stuff in there. Okay, so features of the wiki that I think are really cool. Because this is a static HTML page, everything that we do that is more dynamic, everything that's more dynamic works with JavaScript on the client, which means it's running in your browser. An example of that would be this, citations. I didn't put it on my list. People are chatting at me while I'm doing this. I'm going to ignore that. Okay, so the citations are a good example. So here we have Checkmate, right? And on this page, you can see it says citation, and then there's a citation. Well, on the old wiki, what you had to do was you had to write the media wiki template syntax with the curly braces, and then you would say public or citation, and then you have to say, you know, last name, first name, title, blah, 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 blah. And you could do that. It was like managing your own bib text or whatever, if you've ever done that with LaTeX. But it was annoying because we can do better, right? So DOIs these days, at almost every publication, even software now, can have DOIs. And DOIs can be resolved on the internet, and we're on the internet, so why not just resolve it? So if you look at the TrackMate source, what we have is this thing here where I say DOI, and then I put the DOI string. And then down here, all I have to say is include citation with nothing else. And what that does is it goes, oh, you want to put a citation here. Well, you didn't tell me which citation you want, so I'm going to assume it's the citation for the page I'm currently on, which will be this one. So that is why we see the citation here. And you can also give the DOI explicitly. So if I wanted to say DOI equals and then give a DOI here, it would cite that publication. And you can also say ID equals, and you can say, I want to cite software/ImageJ2, and it'll do the ImageJ2 citation, or the Fiji citation, or the citation for the SNT, for example, so with ID. So writing that into your wiki pages now, like if you have a bibliography, you can add those as references. There's also a footnote thing that Mark did, which I sadly broke. I'm so sorry, that you say footnote equals whatever, and then wherever you put this, I think you'll see a little hyperlinked one, and then at the bottom you'll get it. That's just using Markdown footnotes, which you can do like this as well. So that's a really cool, nice thing to do as well. I'm trying to, if anyone's interested in the citation stuff more, just mention in the chat and I can point you at a page. I don't, off the top of my head, remember one that has a bibliography, but there are some. So, okay. So that's the citation thing. Please interrupt. Does anyone have any questions about citations, or does that make sense?
I think I've got a quick question.
I see a thumbs up, which, yeah, sure.
I saw a page with the footnote, and when you say you broke it, I guess what do you mean exactly? Because I saw something that was a little strange, and I want to know if it's something that I should bring to your attention, or maybe you know about it already.
Sure. Do you remember which page?
It was the registration category.
The registration category. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that
This
means.
is not the biggest deal, maybe, but essentially the strange thing that I saw that used to be the case was footnotes would link to their references. That is, like,
yeah,
I think there would be a link in the original, like when you cite something.
MorphoLibJ does
I think you could click on something, it would take you to the bottom of the page where the citation was, and then vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not the case, I think.
Whoa. Okay, so I thought this page did it. So if you look at the, I'm looking at MorphoLibJ. I'm going to show you guys how I'm doing this in a little while. How I'm doing this, like looking at the site through my text or through my terminal and so forth. But I just did a quick grep to see which things include citations with footnotes, and MorphoLibJ was one. So I thought I would load that page. Also, the Fiji publications page does that. Let's check that one as well. Software Fiji publications. Okay. Do we get footnotes? There's something funny going on with oh, it's populating ICIAM. Okay. So these four for sure worked. You can see these are footnotes. These are marked down footnotes. And I can tell that because one, they're numbered. And two, they have this little hyperlink. If I click that, it goes back up to wherever footnote is. So is this what you're talking about, John? That I have this like little one right here? Yeah. So the way that that works, let's check the code to see how that works. So I'm going to click it one more time. Okay, so the globally optimal squash segmentation algorithm. Okay, probably is what I will look for. So now I go edit, and then I look for globally. I did it. Globally. Why is this not finding it? Have you guys used this search on this online thing? Does my question make sense? Okay, well, I can also look for fn equals. Okay, so no, that's not being used. But here's how the citations work, right? You put this bracket and you put a caret, and then you put a number. And then what at the bottom, you just write the same thing. 31 colon. And then you can put, so this citation is not done using the citation include with the DOIs. It's done manually. And I think the reason for that is I went through and I changed as many of these as I could to DOIs, but there were a few that I didn't find the DOI or that I didn't have time yet. So this is not fully, this syntax here that I just highlighted where it's actually manually specifying stuff is how citation used to work. And that's not supported at the moment anymore. We could put it back, but it's a lot more complicated. So I'm interested in your feedback on citations. If you feel like you need that, or if you feel like you're okay just writing them out like this in the case of not having a DOI. In my experience, there's a DOI for almost everything. So, but this is how you do this. This is how you do the footnotes, either like this or like this. And the FN equal we need to fix, but it will get fixed. So just be aware that that is mostly functional, and we're going to fix the rest of it. And there's one other thing that I want to do with citations, which is to bake them in at build time, by which I mean, you may notice it's using JavaScript right now. So like when I load the Fiji publications page, it takes a minute and you can kind of see, I guess maybe if I reload, you'll see there. So you can see it's happening here. These are not populated yet, and then they're popping in because I didn't, I need to use JavaScript multi-threading promises, but right now it just does them one after another. It's kind of slow. And I will make this better, but this is just a first cut at making the citations easier for you, because what I want, and this is important to highlight here, it's a very general point. What I want is for everyone to focus on their content. And I have a note about this in the documentation for this hackathon, that your goal when you're looking through these pages to fix them is to fix them so that when you look at the source, you're like, okay, I've declared semantically what this is, right? This is a citation of this DOI, you know, as opposed to screwing around with writing style, you know, padding left 5 pixels or whatever. You should never have to do that. And if you find yourself doing that, it means that our site layout is kind of not optimal and we should do better. So like yesterday, for example, Stefan Saalfeld was in here trying to make, he had 3 figures and he just wanted them to be from left to right, like all in a row. And he was messing around with style for a long time to make this work. And so we were trying to talk about like, how would we make the styling of the site itself correct so that all he has to do is just declare his 3 figures and maybe put a little technical short thing that says, and they go all in a row or some right, or like maybe make a table, but you use markdown tables, just some sort of super easy way of making your figures. So this is still another work in progress. Right now, if you look in the documentation, hopefully you guys have all seen this, how do I edit this website stuff. This is the mother lode of how to do stuff on this wiki. So everything I'm showing is documented to some extent in here, except for I think nav-bars aren't yet. I'll get to that. But all of the syntax stuff that I talked about, citations, which I just talked about, are here, right? And it shows you, how to do this stuff. I didn't put the footnotes in here. Okay, yeah, we'll have to, it is in here, creating footnotes. That's right. I was saying that, Saalfeld was trying to get the figures, right? So you can do figures with images. You can say, caption. So what I want is, I don't want you to have to think about, is this a figure? Is this not a figure? You have an image and you want it to have a caption. So you write caption equals, and then what happens is you get the caption that says figure 1, this is a left figure, and it puts a little box around it. But if you don't put a caption, then you just get the image without that. So that's how it works, and that's how videos work as well. They also support captions. Whether that's always going to be how it is, we'll see. But if we change it, we will do an en masse migration of all of the syntax over to the new syntax and then update the docs. So you don't have to worry. Follow the docs as written. And if you find yourself doing a lot of bending over backwards for style, just talk to me, is what I'm saying, because I want to make sure that you don't ever have to do that. This is also important for me as maintainer, because otherwise what happens is people do things 6 different ways with different style layouts. And then when I finally make a way of doing it nicely, those old ways people did it to hack around it, I can't update those because I can't find them. I didn't know about them. And if I do get grep to search, I can't find it. So if you semantically declare it to the best of your ability, even if it looks crappy, I can at least fix it later. And you don't have to. All right, so stuff. I was going to talk about the front matter, because I think this is a really important point about the new site. This front matter is just the 3 dashes, which you've seen at the top of every page. So firstly, if you forget to put this, if you make a new page and you forget to put this, the new page will not work. So you have to put the 3 dashes and you have to put a title and then 3 more dashes. There is a plugin that would let us infer titles from the file names, but I don't think we want this, because I don't think we really ever want the title to be just kind of an automatically upcased version of some super short URL. I think that I just want you guys to always put a title. So we didn't install that plugin. Please put a title. The rest of this stuff is all optional, but you can put anything here. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to stick with whatever is documented on the site. I can put some sort of thing here, and that front matter exists. You won't see it anywhere on the website, but it's there and you can use it. And you can use it using the liquid syntax. So if I now say page.foo in curly braces, that will be the value of this thing. You might say like, well, what's the point? I could just write bar here. But this is, if you're a programmer, you know this, that sometimes, you have the same long string a bunch of times and you don't want to cut and paste it, because then if you change it later, you have to change it everywhere. So the nice thing here is I could write some super long thing and I can write this everywhere, So author name or whatever, Curtis Reedon. And then let's say I want to talk about myself on this page a lot. And so I do this, and then I use author name everywhere. And then later, if I hand this off to, Bob Jones or something, then you can just change it in one place. So that's nice. And the other thing about the front matter is this is YAML. Okay. So yet another markup language. If you want to Google for YAML, you can read about it, but it's very powerful, actually. You can do big data structures with it. So you may notice that the categories are written with these brackets. That's not just one string that we parse. This is actually an array of 3 values. You can also write it like this. This is valid YAML as well. If you write categories and then just write them out like that, that would work just the same. as writing it in the brackets with the commas. It doesn't matter. And you'll see, in fact, some other places where we do use this syntax, like with affiliations. If we look at people/CT and want to not change TrackMate, you can see my affiliation. I listed it like so. The affiliation thing is a little vague. You can put multiple affiliations, one per line, or you can put multiple details of one affiliation, one per line, or mix that. It's up to you. The fact is, it just renders as multiple lines on the page, right? You may have seen this, but I can just quickly show you what this ends up looking like for my page. So the stat box just looks at those and it renders them here, one per line, and you can do whatever you want with that. So just, but that's an example of the YAML being useful in a way that's more structured than just key value pairs. And I'll give you one more example of that. This is a feature that is not done yet, and so it's not really documented, but I am working on it, and I hope to have it ready later. Timelines. So here, there's a timeline. And the reason that I want to support timelines is because we actually have a couple on the old wiki had some. So for example, if you look at the ImageJ, the main ImageJ page, we scroll down to timeline, there's this ugly bastard here. This is done using a MediaWiki plugin that falls back on some tool that's very powerful, but it just creates these static bitmap timelines. So you can't, this is not interactive. I think on the old wiki, you could click these links and they would go to the pages, which is why they're blue. But that was the extent of it, right? And in order to do this, though, the cool thing was that you could write out in the source code in the MediaWiki, what each one is, where the link is, which year the thing is on, and then it would lay it out for you. And so I wanted that again for the new wiki, because right now all we did is paste this bitmap in here and I can't change it easily. So I wanted something better, and I wanted something that would be more, 2021. So I started looking for good timeline, HTML, CSS timelines, and I found this one, which I really like. This is just their example one for notable inventions. But what's cool is that not only is it interactive and you can click on stuff, but if you look at the actual way that it works, it's using the YAML, right? I made up a key called timeline inventions, and I just wrote in this syntax here with year followed by label followed by description. And then all you have to do then is say include timeline equals that key, page.timeline inventions. And then it feeds all this data into the timeline include logic, which takes care of everything for you. So that's the kind of feature that we can support on this wiki. And this is like just the tip of the iceberg. If you guys have other ideas for things that are useful to declare in a structured way and then have them get rendered in a nice way on the site using JavaScript or using CSS, then let's talk about it, because I think this is really powerful. So that's the YAML. And as you've seen from the docs, we're using it in several places. Oh, and then the other thing I wanted to show is a couple of other examples of okay, so this is actually the other powerful thing about the wiki is the liquid. So these include mechanisms and the fact that you can write some logic. Now, you guys probably won't, when you're editing your pages, write very much liquid aside from include. But I wanted to show you what it can do, because it's how we're doing some of the neat stuff on this site. The first example I would highlight would be on this great wiki launch docs, this page list. I am not going in here and editing this every time you guys finish a page, right? This progress bar works automatically, and the list of pages here works automatically. As you probably know, when you remove the MediaWiki : front matter, then it'll disappear from this list. So the question would be, how does that work? And you don't have to be a programmer. Because we don't have to dive in super deep into how it works. But just to give you an idea, sort of what we do, I'm looping over pages. Okay, so let's see. Good example. Here I say site.pages is all the pages on the entire site, and I filter out to only the ones where there's like a MediaWiki front matter. So MediaWiki not equal nil means there is one. It can be whatever. And that's the pages that are still left to do. And then I can loop over the pages that are left to do for P and to do pages. This is a loop. So for each page, I do some processing to make the progress bar, and then down here, once they're sorted out in the right order that I wanted, then I just render them. And so you end up with, HTML. Like I said, it's just HTML. All it is a big UL, LI, unordered list, and then you style it the way you want. So it's quite flexible. At some point, we could add site themes using this mechanism, for example. So if you guys don't like the styling, what I was thinking of doing actually was, as a first attempt, adding a dark mode. So all we would have to do is change the CSS and then use a little JavaScript with cookies so you could click back and forth between dark mode. Okay, but yeah, so the page list is one example of that. But then a lot of these in the menu here, if you click on Explore Libraries, this page, it's not very pretty right now, but this list is also not maintained manually. Anything that, if you make a new library, or okay, so let's say you have a new software package, like you want to add QPath here. So you would just, QPath is maybe already on the list. No, it's not. I need to add it. I actually have a card for that in the roadmap. So let's say you create software QPath. It will appear on this list automatically. You don't have to do anything. Just put it, as long as you put it under /software. Because again, what we do is we filter all the sites by if they start with /software. So that logic is here. And that's how that works. And so then I was able to just do that for all these different things. If you go to contribute contributors, I like this one a lot. This part here is manually maintained. By the way, if you want to be on this list and you're not on this list, on any of these, just add yourself. Everyone who's listening to me blather on right now is in this enough that I trust you to judge whether you should be on the list of people responsible for different things. Okay, so that's all manually maintained. But then down here, this is automatic, and that's just every single person who has a people page, a person page on this wiki is in this list, because those people have all been doing something, whether it's making edits or being responsible for some software that's related to ImageJ somehow. Then that's how this list is done, again, with a big loop. And then here you can see the footnotes again. So I used footnotes for all of this, for all of these affiliations. Like Kevin here is the loci, right? And then linking back up to everybody with that affiliation. Yeah, okay, cool. So that's all I wanted to talk about with the front matter and with the Liquid, power of Liquid. So now I'd like to show you a couple of the other things that maybe are more interesting to you as an editor of individual pages. So firstly, there's the nav-bars. This is not documented yet, and so I think it's worth highlighting it quickly for you, since as some sort of reward for you tolerating me. Okay, nav-bars. Software/SNT is a good example. It's not software, it's plugins. Plugins SNT. So here you can see the simple Neurite tracer, which is now branded SNT by Tiago Ferreira, and with contributions from Kyle and Cameron and others. And it was originally by Mark Longair, just to give credit where credit's due. I think he is the first author of the simple Neurite tracer before it got made completely supercharged by Tiago. So you may notice at the top that there's this part, this extra third menu, and that when I scroll, it sticks to the top. These keys are all of the pages that are in this folder. And the way that you make this appear, if you look under the front matter, there's this nav links true. So the nav links true just says, please put that third menu at the top and populate it with all of the other pages that are in this directory. And then there's this optional one called nav title. If you don't put that, the title will be the title. So if you look back at the SNT navbar, you can see that this page, the main SNT page, it says overview here. If I click to analysis now, the actual title is SNT chevron analysis. And that was what it would say here as well. So with a naive navbar true with no nav titles, you get this SNT chevron thing appearing in front of every link. And that was kind of ugly. So in order to work around that, what I did was I just specified a nav title as well. So that way you can configure the links of your navigation independently of the title of your page. I think that's helpful to make the navigation a little bit more succinct. Okay, so that's what we call the automatic navbar. which is super convenient because then it's really easy to maintain, right? If you delete one of your pages, it'll just be gone from the navigation. If you add a page, it'll just be in the navigation. Super nice. There are cases where that is not sufficient, like if you really don't want every single page to appear. One thing we could add that we don't have yet is I could add something that's like, I could make it so that the navlinks true only includes all the pages that say navlinks true. So if you don't put navlinks true on a page, then it won't be in the navigation either. That would be nice. I think we should do that. And then the other thing is you can actually specify it manually. So the TrackMate has an example of that right now. So let's see here. Oh, you know what I didn't highlight at all is the search bar. I'll talk about the search bar next because that's amazing. TrackMate has no nav-bar, as you can see. However, there are some TrackMate tutorials, like how to do XYZ. So this is also under plugins TrackMate, as you can see. And it's one of the 7 tutorials that Jean-Yves wrote. And he wrote them to be read in a very particular order. The edge feature analyzers are supposed to be the first one. See, it says the first in a series of tutorials. So in order to make that make sense, I made this nav-bar go in the order he intended, the second in the series. It's this one, and then third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. So in order to do that, what I had to do, unfortunately, is I had to just list all the things that I wanted in the navlinks. So this is another example of the front matter YAML being very useful. So the navlinks logic that I wrote with Liquid looks, if it's just true, then it does the magic that I talked about. And if you actually list everything out, then it will just use what you listed out directly. And then, unfortunately, the downside of that is that you have to copy and paste this sucker into all 7 of these pages. And if you change one of them, you have to go change it everywhere. We could add some way of a level of indirection where you say navlinks equals something, and then wherever that points at something where you put it. But I think that we'll do that if we need that. For now, just give it a try and let me know what you think. If you're using it and you find that it's unwieldy somehow, then we'll talk about ways of making it better. But I think that it is helpful already. 2 things that I want to talk about next, since I tangented on them almost already. One is these navigations. Okay, so we've got the page contents. This populates automatically by your headers. So whatever headers you put with the hash signs, that's what you'll get over here. And as long as you have at least 2, then it appears. If you only have 1 heading, the page contents gets hidden because it's like, what's the point? You may notice this little triangle. You can drag these around. So if you don't like the fact that the main menu is on the left and you want the main menu to be on the right, you can do that. And it will remember that with cookies. Supposed to remember that with cookies. Maybe okay, I'm on a local host and that could be why there's a problem, or there could now be a bug with it, but it used to work. If you find it doesn't work for you, ping me and I'll fix it. But you get the idea that you can move these side to side. And then there's also the stat box, which I haven't talked about yet, but that is as well. You can put that somewhere else. So if you're like, I hate this stat box, it's, my table of contents is now hard to find, just move the stat box somewhere else. What you can't do yet is move the navlinks in the middle, and that's not a target droppable area. Let's see how to. So yeah, if I go back here, you can see that this doesn't have a little dragger, a little gripper. I thought about making one, but it would be more work. So if you feel like you need it, then tell me and I'll try to do it so that you can actually drop things into the middle here as well. Another thing relating to all this is mobile. So the way that we deal with the mobile layout is by how wide your page is. So as you widen your page, certain things change. If you get too narrow, you can see the sidebars disappear. All right, close that. To the point where everything just becomes single column because it's assuming you're probably on a mobile phone at that point if you've got it this skinny. Now, I would be interested in your feedback on how it should work mobile, because right now you get the table of contents, but you don't get the nav bar. And I think that's a problem because the nav bar might be the only way you've exposed for accessing different aspects of your documentation. And I think probably the nav bar shouldn't disappear. So at minimum, I'm going to make it so the nav bar just stays when you shrink the width. But if you have other suggestions for what should happen when the page gets narrow, let me know. You may notice as well that the logo in the top left here changes to a hamburger, and that's how you access the main menu. So the main menu is still accessible. I really like what the Napari website has done, where it puts the table of contents not where we have it here, but it puts it in the top right as a second hamburger menu. So I'm not going to load the Napari page right now, but if you go to napari.org, I think, you can see it in action. It's quite slick that when your page is skinny, you get 2 hamburgers. I really like that. So maybe we'll do that as well. Okay, so that's the navigation. This main menu is curated. So there is no way to make a page and put your thing into this main menu via the page itself. So that's not done right now. It's not done via front matter. We could maybe make it be done via front matter. But I think at the moment, the way that you do it is you navigate into the folder called _includes. I guess I'll show it through GitHub since most people are probably using the online editor. So here on GitHub, if you click into, instead of _pages, you go into includes. And then layout, this is where all the includes having to do with how the page is actually structured are, and the menu is one of them. So if you click menu, it's pretty straightforward. You can see it does use raw HTML, but you can cut and paste. So if you hit edit on this sucker, you're like, I really think that my page should be listed, right? I wrote a new page about scientific imaging, you know. So I highlight this and I cut it and I paste it, and then I just change this to be /imaging/ my awesome topic, and then here my awesome topic, and just make sure you keep the surrounding tags, and that should be all you need to do. And then this will appear on every page because this menu gets jammed into every page automatically. So, all right, I think what I'm going to do is take any quick questions about what I've talked about so far before I move on to other stuff, just so that you guys don't actually pass out. Any other questions? Somebody has to tell me what their favorite feature I've talked about so far is before I will move on. Someone has to take a bullet for the team.
Favorite feature, but I do like the idea of the second hamburger.
Okay, so +1 on the second hamburger. All right, I'll work on doing that, Mike. That's good. Okay. If nobody else wants to volunteer their favorite feature, then I guess I'll go, since somebody proved that someone's listening. Okay, so we talked about nav bars. I hope that all made sense. I showed you the drag and drop sidebars. I wanted to talk about search, and I wanted to talk about MathJax, and I want to talk about syntax highlighting, and then we'll be done. So 3 more things. And then and then I guess I'll do questions about how anything works will be the last thing we do. Okay, search. Let's do that one, because that one, if there's one thing you take out of this presentation, please remember there is a search bar. I keep forgetting, and I keep typing stuff and clicking stuff, and it's like fine that you can type and click stuff, but if you push L, if you click the page and you push L and you start typing, it's just like in ImageJ in Fiji, where if you hit L and you go to the search bar and you can type, and it just pops up instantly. So let me think of something that I even want. And then escape, I think, clears whatever you were typing. And you can use the arrow keys. So let's see, I want to vanity find my own page again. Down here, I can use the arrow keys to go wherever I want. I can use page up and page down to go through the pages, just as though I were clicking these numbers here, or clicking the chevrons. And then I can hit enter to load the page. And in fact, if I don't hit the down arrow, but I just hit enter, it loads the first one. So I think that those familiar with that ImageJ style navigation of running plugins, if you aren't familiar with that, you should try it. You can launch plugins super fast. It's really helpful. But you can also navigate the site super fast that way. So the way that works, if you're interested in a little bit of technical detail, we use a tool called type search and instant search. Those two things together are very powerful. And so there's a search.imagej.net, which exposes that as a service. So if you're a programmer and you want to tap into the search bar, you can do that. You just have to do an API, RESTful API call on it. So you can read about that if you go to typesense.org and you go to the docs. and the API. Then you go to API resources, documents. This is how you add search. Okay, yeah. So indexing a document, you won't have permission to do externally. You have to have a special key for that, and we just do that on our server infrastructure. We, every so often we pull down the latest wiki pages, and then we jam them all into the index so that things stay up to date. I think right now it's not happening automatically with a cron job, but we're gonna set that up ASAP. But no, if you're a developer who wants to tap into the search, you just you use this API here, the search API. You can pass queries and get the info back, and it's very powerful that it has this idea of facets, which are, you can think of them as a multiple choice. So for example, categories are a perfect example of facets. I think I'm not actually declaring categories as a type sense facet yet, but I will. So that way when you could say search query equals some string, category equals transform, and you'll only get back pages that have that category. So I think this is quite nice. So that's the search bar. As a user, I hope it's useful. And you can always think about how should I structure my content to make it most useful in search. The only thing you can really to keep in mind with that is the description. So if I search for TrackMate, for example, you can see that it says, the first sentence here is, please note that TrackMate is available through Fiji and is based on a publication. That doesn't tell you what TrackMate is. It's a bad description. And the reason is because we didn't put one. If you look in here, there isn't one. But if you write description : TrackMate is your buddy for everyday tracking, I'm actually going to commit this right now. Then next time the search index updates, which, like I said, we have to do manually now, but soon it'll probably be once an hour. So this will be improve TrackMate description for search bar. I will save that. So yeah, and probably within a few hours, I'll run that again. And then when we search for TrackMate in the search bar, it will say TrackMate is your buddy for everyday tracking instead of that note about the citation. I'm surprised that this wasn't already picked up as the first sentence, though, because the logic I wrote is supposed to grab the very first sentence of the page. I don't know. In any case, we have specified it ourselves now, so good. All right, that's search bar. MathJax is already documented, so you can read about that in the how to edit. How do I edit this website? And math expressions. This was a thing you could do on the old wiki. There was a LaTeX plugin that we had set up, and I got to tell you, man, that was a pain to set up. It broke at least once when we were upgrading the wiki, and I had to install like just a boatload of packages on the server in order to make that work. The MathJax thing is much nicer. It's nicer because it still gives you the power of LaTeX to write math expressions, but it's done with JavaScript, and you can select them. So like here, I don't know how useful it is to actually copy and paste the Pythagorean or the quadratic formula, but let's see what happens when I paste it. I want to know. That looks pretty good, right? Like, I mean, it's not worthless. So it's kind of cool that you can, and if it's something like this, this is handy to be able to do instead of having it like render it as a graphic or something, right? That's quite nice. So the way that you do the math is you just put these $2 signs and then you write your expression using the LaTeX style, and then you write the $2 signs again at the end. And so this is just some quick examples that Ed put in for how to do it. What you really want to read is these guides, like the MathJax guide. And then Ed asked me to point out to you guys that this is really great and really powerful, but you will notice right now some pages that have MathJax weirdness is what we're calling it. Places where things are being turned into MathJax, but it's not actually intended to be a math formula. And I would like you to try to fix those if you find them. And in fact, if you find some, can you post in the chat for me? Because I would like to look, as a developer, I'd like to look at a couple pages where that's happening and see if I can see a pattern. If I can see a pattern in the places where the MathJax is being rendered incorrectly, or like, inappropriately, maybe we can do some en masse fix to all pages with some search and replace magic. That would be my preference. So then everybody doesn't have to waste a bunch of time fixing every single page. That's always my preference, by the way. It wasn't likely that I asked the community to come and try to help do every page, but I figured, this is an excuse for us to all learn more about wikis anyway. So, okay. So what was I going to say? Yes, I was going to show you, as long as we're talking about things I'd like you guys to keep an eye on, I'm going to tangent now to the documentation for this hackathon. If you have not already looked at it, Great Wiki launch. This page, which of course you've all at least glanced at because I linked it. But if you go to how to help, this is a long page. I know it's long. I know reading documentation sucks. But there are some things that if you guys could please read over, if you haven't already, the first 4 sections, because I really need feedback. I need feedback on questions to consider. These are things that I want to try to solve as part of this hackathon. I want to get these pages moved to the right places. I want your opinions on what the category labels should be for plugins. I want your opinions on where some things should live in the directory structure. It's fine if you have no opinion. Don't worry about it. But if you like having opinions, then feel free to share. That would be helpful. And then addressing common problems is the other one I really want you guys to look at. So this one, as you're working on pages, it would be helpful if you were familiar with these different kinds of problems that can happen so that are thinking on how to fix them. You probably have heard me blathering about the statbox, which I said I was going to show later, but it's not on my list. So let's put that on the list, statbox. Anywhere there's include info box, you get these this sort of big blocky blue box at the very top of the page that takes up the entire page. We're trying to convert that over to those stat box on the right. So that's talked about here. But yeah, MathJax appearing inappropriately, that's number 1 on this list. And I said, right here, I said, once we know more, then we'll document how to fix it. But nobody has said in the chat yet, hey, I found a page where there's all this weird math. Maybe there's not as much as I thought, but I swear I've seen it around. So please tell me if you find some. Okay, and then just read this over and look at how to fix all these different problems. People were also asking me about the stat box and how do I do it? So, this thing right here has examples that are linked to here. So you can look at those. So speaking of the stat box, I'm now going to poll you. Instead of just blathering on and talk about it, I'm going to poll. If you want me to talk about the stat box, please click a reaction, click the thumbs up. Otherwise, I will skip it. We have 20 seconds. Very cool. Awesome. I will then show you the stat box. Okay. Let's open this one, and that one. A good example would be 3D Viewer. Plugins, 3D Viewer. Okay. TrackMate is another good example, but are we going to load? I know I fixed this. So that we have to have some demoitis anytime you do things live, right? Is there an error? Uncaught type. Oh, because I was trying to hack on something. That's always what happens. I'll just use the live site. That should work. ImageJ.github.io. Just to explain quickly what I meant by what I just said. You probably notice here that I have in my browser this weird 127 thing. This is me serving up a copy of the site to myself that I have made changes to locally. And that is described in the advanced editing section. If you're interested in knowing how to do that, this page walks you through how that works. And I know it's a little scary to do things on the command line sometimes. I totally get that, but it's worth it because if you learn to run this one command and you make it so it actually works, then you have so much faster turnaround. You can make edits and you can refresh the page and make edits and refresh the page, and it builds really quickly. I will just show you how fast it builds because I have this running in one of my little tabs down here. And every time I make a change to a page, the whole site builds in, maybe 25 seconds, as you can see here on my machine. That's might be more like 30, 35, depending on how strong your computer is. But if you just make a change to one page, it builds in, 1 second. Yeah, so here's an example where I changed something and it only took 0.7 seconds to update it. So unlike making a change through the GitHub interface where you have to wait 60 to 120 seconds or more, maybe even longer, depending on whether GitHub is kind of slow, for the change to be reflected, you get to see it immediately. And I'm sorry that we don't have like the old wiki where edits go live instantly. I wish we did. That's a downside of this system, but I don't have a better solution for that. I do have some ideas and ways we could do it, but it would require us to host more tech on our server rack and trying not to do that so we don't have hackers derailing our community as much. All right, so statbox. The TrackMate statbox is populated from the TrackMate jar file that gets deployed to the production repository. So we use a tool called Maven, and with Maven, it keeps all your artifacts. Aha, Toby, we're still doing it. It keeps all your artifacts in the central repository. So like if I search for TrackMate here, you can see all of the TrackMate artifacts. You can see what their latest versions are. So the actual TrackMate plugin that you might be familiar with is here, the TrackMate underscore. The last version that Jean-Yves released is 6.01, but you can look back through all the old versions he's ever released. You can click into what's called the POM, which is the master kind of single point of metadata curation, where we put all the information about this project. It's like everything that the computer needs to know to build the project and kind of assemble it, but also everything that humans need to know about the project. So like the licensing, for example, you can see here that it's a GNU General Public Licensed project. It's open source. You can see what year Jean-Yves started TrackMate. You can find where the documentation lives, and you can see who the people are, that he's the guy, right? And I help maintain it, and you can see people who've contributed. So everything that's in this POM is the canonical source of info about this project. And I thought it's crazy that we are writing all the info into this POM and it can't be seen on the wiki, right? So that's what this vital stats thing is it's just a rendering of all that information. It's a way of populating this without you needing to cut and paste or come in and manually update your wiki page after you make a release. So Jean-Yves just cuts his release, deploys it to Maven, and then this stat box here will update automatically. The way that works, if you look at the page source, all he has to have is this one line, artifact : and he says what it is. So it's TrackMate is the name of the jar file, and SC Fiji is what's called the group ID. So it's part of the Fiji umbrella of projects. So it's SC Fiji. If you look at ImageJ, like one of the libraries, if I go here to explore libraries and I look at, say, ImageJ ops, it also has a stat box that tells you about the last time that ops was released. And I'm on the local site again, so it's broken. I'll go here. Okay, there it is. And once again, there's an artifact, but this time you'll see that the artifact is net.imagej because this is part of the core ImageJ2 stuff. And if you make a project, a jar file plugin, and it's not part of Fiji and it's not part of ImageJ core, but you ship it on an update site, you should have your own group ID, which is, you can name it however you want. The convention is like this reverse domain name. So if you have, curtis.info, it would be info.curtis for your group ID. Okay, now the only problem with this for people who aren't as technical, if you are just, you know enough to program in Java, but you don't want to deal with Maven, say, then it becomes, or you don't want to deal with deploying to the Maven repository. This becomes a bit more challenging because in order to deploy, you have to have like deployment credentials, and we set up this continuous online build system that does it, and it might be kind of daunting. And so there's another way you can do it. There's two more ways you can do it, so I'll show you them quickly. One, which I just set up last night for the BioVoxel plugins, BioVoxel toolbox. You'll notice it now has a sidebar vital stats as well. And this one works, again, automatically. But to do that one, instead of artifact, it's POM URL. So Jan is using Maven, and he's extending the POM/SciJava POM, but he's not deploying his releases to the maven.scijava.org. And that's fine. It means that all he has to do instead is now point at his POM on GitHub. So the way that I found this URL is you just go to your GitHub repository, biovoxel. So this is his repo, and his POM is in this biovoxel plugins folder. There's the POM, and you just click raw, this raw button, and now this is the link that you will feed to the wiki. So you just put POM URL : that link, and then it will make it automatic for you. This will be documented, but just we don't have that yet. Okay, so that's the second way that you can fill in the stat box. There's a third way, which is to just do it yourself, and then you do have to update it. But the nice thing about that is that you have full control over what goes in there. You have full control anyway if you're writing a POM, but then you have to write a POM, and maybe writing a POM is annoying, or maybe you're using a different build system. You don't want to use Maven. That's all fine. You can still do it. So here's an example where this developer, his name is David Coho, he had made this DHM utilities with a couple of different jar files, I think. And he had been using the old info box, and I migrated him over to the new stat box, and I just migrated him this way. So in order to do it, you just put all the fields that you want to have. These fields, of course, I don't expect you to guess them, right? Like to know what they are documented right now. I'll show you where they are. To know where these fields are, they're in the includes, in the layout, just like with the main menu, but it's under statbox. So if you click that guy, you wouldn't make changes to this, but this is just to read. I wrote a really long comment. There's commentary here that explains everything, at least to a little bit, right? So this explains the two modes, the automatic versus the manual mode, and how you would do it. The stat box is also used for people, as an aside. I'll come back to this in a moment, but just to quickly show that, if you look at people me, you'll see that I have a stat box. I'm not a plugin, but I have a stat box, but it has different stuff, right? Because the stuff is relevant to people, not software. But it's the same kind of overarching block of code that manages this. If you guys have things that you'd like statistics about that aren't people and aren't plugins, and have an idea of how that stat box would look for that other kind of type of content, then talk to me, because we can extend the stat box to support more types of content. An example might be if you want to have a documentation about your organization. There's orgs. So like I could have vital stats on loci over here, but right now we don't. That's the thing that we could do though, if you're interested. Anyway, back to the fields. I showed you that so that this would make a little more sense. Think when you're documenting a component, i.e. a plugin or script or whatnot, these are the fields you'll use. And when you're documenting a person, yourself or whoever, these are the fields that you could use. And if both of them, these fields are relevant because you might have websites about either or icon about either. So hopefully this is all sufficient for you guys to figure it out and use it. But if you find this confusing, then I'm happy to beef up the docs. I'm happy to add a page on the wiki and editing the wiki that talks about how you would populate this. I mean, we will eventually. It's just right now, this is what we have. So that's how you use the stat box. And you can see the logic here. If you give an artifact or you give a POM URL, then it's going to do an auto pop. That's populating it magically. Otherwise, it's not going to do an auto pop. And feel free to dive into this if you're interested in kind of how it works, but get the idea. One aside, you may notice that the tooltips, there are tooltips here, which I like, but that they're off the edge of the screen. Sorry about that. I'll try to fix that. A nice thing, though, is that it tells you what each of these things means. Because these different team categories, like developers, contributors, team leads, maintainers, they all have different meaning. That's described actually on the wiki somewhere. ImageJ.net/team is where that was described. Team roles. Yeah. Okay, so this is the old wiki. The team roles that migrated to, where did that migrate to? You may wonder, how do I find where a page migrated to? Because you can see how a page migrated. You can see where it went, where it came from by that link in the top corner, yeah? That up in the top here when there's a Media Wiki, this Media Wiki page or whatever, links back. But to go forward, in case you're curious, you can also find that. There's a file that tracks all that. It's called redirects.txt. So if you go to the repo, and you go down here to redirects.txt, you click on that, you'll see there's a list of every wiki page and 2 colons and then where it went. And we're keeping this in sync so that once I actually change ImageJ.net to serve this new wiki, which is the plan to do that in 2 days on Friday, the end of the day, then all of these links will redirect to the new links so that all the old links in the wild should seamlessly still work. We won't break everything that links into this wiki. Okay, so I was wondering, where did this governance page go? You probably know already, but I can just search for that, governance : and I find that it's in contribute now. Contribute to governance, great. So now I go here and I go contribute governance. And there's a team project roles, there we go. So here's where it explains it now. Wait, twice. Interesting. Oh, I see. This is like a general summary of what those terms mean in the world, and this is a summary of what they mean to us in the SciJava world. Okay, good. Does anybody have any questions about the stat box before I talk about anything else? Good. Okay, we're already at an hour, and I don't want to drain everyone's energy like energy vampire, so we'll go quick for the rest. We still have syntax highlighting. Oh yeah, Ed just wanted me to point out the syntax highlighting stuff. If you are pasting any blocks of code or anything that benefits from colors, the old Media Wiki had it as well, but I think the new site, it's even nicer, and I really like it. So I'm just going to quickly point you at the page where you can read about that. How do I edit this website? And code, source code. And this talks about all the different ways of doing it. My advice to you, if you use GitHub with any of your stuff, is to do the embedding external code approach. So this is really nice for like putting in blocks of code from GitHub so that if you change it on GitHub, it changes on the wiki, and then you don't have to come back to the wiki and click edit and paste your new code. So like here I have an example where I linked this little program. And you can even specify line numbers and so forth. This is where I'd like your feedback. For any of you who do anything on GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket, GitLab and Bitbucket, if you use those, I did a little tease, and I made the thing syntactically so that you can say, include some code from GitLab, but if you try to actually do it, then you get this message saying, it doesn't work yet, because I wanted to hear from anyone who wants this, so that if there's demand, we can work on adding this. And same thing for Bitbucket. I don't know anyone who's using Bitbucket. This is like the only repo I could find was something from Keller Lab, the KLB format. There's a repo on Bitbucket. But other than that, there's a few people using GitLab in their institutions, but most people are using GitHub. I don't feel strongly. I mean, of course, GitHub is where we do all the core stuff, which means if you use GitHub, things are well tested, but GitLab is great. I love it even more than GitHub in some ways, and I would like to make this work, but I honestly couldn't figure out how in like an hour, so that's why it's not implemented yet. All right, but yeah, this also talks about ways of inlining your code, so you can either use this. This is the standard markdown way with the code fences, but then there's also this other thing that's the liquid way where you say highlight. They're both fine. You can try them and see which one works better for you or what you're trying to do. All right, so that's colors. And then I guess I'll open the floor. Did I forget anything? Yes, I forgot. I didn't. I was going to talk about the local hosting of like the advanced editing, but I did. I showed you guys that all you have to do is set up this tool called Jekyll, and then on the command line, you can be running this little server all the time, such that whenever you make changes, you see them. You see I'm using Vim on the right here. But you don't have to use Vim. You can use whatever. You can use an IDE. You can use a text editor. You can use whatever tool you like. Visual Studio Code is a new, nice, powerful, up-and-coming one. Any of these things. If you're a JavaScript type person, there's a lot of options. So those are all nice ways of editing your code locally, your wiki pages and code locally. All right, I will open the floor for questions. If there's no questions, then we'll be done. You're looking at me, looking at you, so I'll stop sharing.
So is there any playground namespace or something we could use to do the test pages? I'm sorry, I got disconnected in the beginning, so I'm not sure if you told about it.
So yeah, we are of the philosophy, the Wikipedia philosophy of be bold and make changes, because changes can always be rolled back. The nice thing about Git is. So firstly, if you're doing test changes that you're concerned will break stuff, the only downside of that, of us all hacking on this main branch all the time, is that there are certain kinds of changes that if you if you have a certain syntax errors will cause the site build to break, which means that no pages will update until those errors are fixed. And I hate that. I wish it were more like MediaWiki, where it could kind of build page by page, and if a page is broken, it would just keep going. We'll look into if there's a way of doing that. There might be a way of doing that, as we're migrating how the site gets built under the hood. We're probably going to migrate to GitHub Actions pretty soon, and when we do that, there may be a way to make it better. But in the meantime, just be aware that if you break stuff, you might break stuff for everyone. But the good news is it won't make the site go down. The site will still be there. It'll be whatever the last successful build was. So everyone's still happy. It's just it needs a maintainer. It needs people like, Mark and me and Ed, who are kind of getting these emails when things break and then just like fixing it if it's broken, so that the site can continue to move forward. Right. But as far as like where to do those kinds of test things, my preference, if you can deal with it, would be to use that advanced editing technique to install Jekyll locally, and then you have a ton of power. You can just play around as much as you want. It's very rapid. You can try lots of stuff. You will get better at Markdown faster by being able to like make a change and just like refresh really quickly and see how it looks. Whereas if you teach yourself this syntax by using the GitHub online editor, that's fine, but it will take you longer, because every time you make an edit, you'll have to wait a couple minutes for the site to rebuild so that you can refresh, so that you can see what it looks like, and so on. So what I did was I went to the 3D viewer. I clicked edit this page. I'm on the editor. I scrolled down to some heading and I changed it. I will change it again. I've changed the heading, and then I go to preview, and it's here. Like I said, most of you probably already noticed this. It's like right there, but this is a really useful way. So as far as staging changes go, most of your changes are going to be just text, content, markdown. And so this is fine. But yeah, if you want to test changes that involve includes, like I was saying that these YouTube videos, they're right here at the very top. Bene has this screencasts, include video, and those won't render because the preview doesn't support Liquid. So I hope that makes sense. So what you can do is you can just make the change and you can see how it looks. And if you don't like it, then change it again. I'm okay with that. I just want to be clear that there's a lot of projects, with coding where we're very militant almost about like, you can't just change stuff. You have to file a pull request and So that's not how this wiki is. Like, I gave everybody edit permissions because I don't want you all to have to file pull requests all the time. I want you to feel like it's your wiki. It's everyone's wiki. You can just go in and do what you want, as long as you're not deleting other people's content. And I think it's all for the best, right? We're trying to make it the most powerful thing we can for the community. So yeah, just change it. You can always make a new page if you're worried, right? So like, let's say I wanted to play with some major changes to this 3D viewer page. I can just copy paste the whole page. And then I can go back here, leave page, and I can say add file, new file, and just paste it in. And just go to town and start making changes and save it as, test index or whatever. And then once that goes live, you'll be able to just look at it. The only danger is if you make syntax errors that break the build, like I said. And worst case scenario, if you find you've broken it and the page isn't refreshing, you can just delete what you did. Or even revert. There's a tool with Git called revert where you go into the commits. I wonder if it'll let us do it through the web UI. Do you guys know if you can actually revert commits from here?
Yeah, but these
I
test
don't see a
pages
way
will
of doing
probably
it.
appear in the indexes and everywhere. So I was wondering if there was some special namespace, or should we use just the media wiki, which is in the non-translated pages or transferred pages?
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. So what I was asking originally was if we have some way of testing, say, editing of the pages, which would not influence the rest of the metadata which was generated there, like debugging the issues with the MathJax, for instance, on some test page.
Yeah, so the best way of doing that to make sure that you do not impact the production site is to use Jekyll locally. Use Jekyll locally. Go to advanced editing, and you can clone the repo. Make sure that you install Jekyll. And then all you have to do is say bundle install and then bundle exec Jekyll serve.
And it will have
That's
your extensions there?
Everything. So then what happens is, I'll show you what happens. You end up with this code locally on your computer. Here, home, code, ImageJ. So I have the repo cloned imagej.github.io right here. So this is my copy of the site, just on my computer. And I'm always running this down here during this hackathon anyway. So I just do bundle exec Jekyll serve. You don't have to say profile. That's just to see statistics about how long it took to build stuff. But if you just say incremental is the fastest mode. So I just run this. And now, because I had already generated the site, you will get the site in this folder _site. So this builds your whole site. The HTML is all in here. You can look at how it looks. And the other cool thing that it does is that it spins up a little local web server. And it says here, server address, boom. So I can actually open this link. If I open this link in my browser now, I'm looking at my local build of the website. So any changes that I have made will be in here.
Yeah.
So let's say that's what you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
So if I RMRF this the 3D viewer plugin, like I want to see how that is, it's gone now. And then if I delete the entire site that I built, it's gone. And now I rerun this. You'll see this will take about 25 or so seconds to rebuild everything since I deleted my previous build. And when that's done, if I reload my page, then you'll see that there's no trace of the 3D viewer in the site that I have locally. So yeah, this is the way that I always work on stuff. The only reason we don't tell everyone to do this is because it's kind of a deterrent for casual editing, right? Like you don't want to have to install this crap in order to just like go in and fix a typo.
Yeah, that's what I also was wondering. So it's for the programmers and developers, not for basic editors.
No, it's for anyone.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a programmer, right? You just have to be able to make a Git clone and install this one tool. So you have to at least be able to run a terminal and like type these 3 commands, which, for some people that's scary, but for a lot of you guys, everybody here is like PhD scientists or programmers. Everybody here is smart. You're all smart. So I know you can all figure it out. You just have to read through the guide just read this guide right here. And if you get stuck, you're welcome to make posts on ImageSC forum about getting help, because people will help getting that working. But I found it to be mostly painless. The Ruby ecosystem is pretty good, so I like it. What was I doing? I was making sure that the 3D viewer is gone. 3D viewer. I see segment blob and 3D viewer, but that was because that was outside that folder. The rest of it's all gone. Okay, other questions that people might have. I will screen sharing and remember to turn it on again if I need to. You've all been very patient to survive over an hour of this stuff, so thanks. Feel free to post in the chat with any questions later. I'm happy to answer them. And just keep in mind that, again, our goal here is to make all the pages have the content that we want them to have. And then if you hate the style, speak up and we'll try to fix the style. Thank you again very much for all of your help and for being willing to come and do this. It means a lot to me. I was daunted to try to clean up all pages by myself. So this is much better to have everybody making this the best it can be. So I'm going to go back to hacking on the list of extensions now, which was the plugin index, and get those filters working so that you can